Hey everyone, welcome to Patriot or Soapbox, where I usually give you my commentary on the news of the day. But as I've said before, the Wall Street Journal runs the Saturday paper is actually the Saturday Sunday paper, so there's no paper today. So on Sunday, instead of doing that, I do something different. My Sunday special, usually a history lesson or an economics lesson. And today I'm doing both and telling you why welfare is screwed up from the beginning. So we start our journey in 1935 during well, America was still in the midst of the Great Depression. At this time, FDR decided to launch the Social Security Administration, which was I believe it was the first of his welfare programs to actually last beyond the Great Depression. Because he had several, some were struck down by the Supreme Court until he threatened to pack the court, or with or so they would said that he could put in justices that would be more favorable to him. So that's where the Democratic court packing thing comes from. Dates back to the 30s, they've been threatening to pack the courts to get their stuff through. That threat worked because the Supreme Court was so afraid of the court packing they decided to let the rest of his program slide. I'm not kidding. He literally bullied the Supreme Court into letting the New Deal go through. But the main thing he pushed through in 1935 was the Social Security Administration. Now, it was actually designed for a demographic that no longer exists. So back in the day, he set the retirement age at 65, and it's stayed at 65 ever since. However, at the time, life expectancy was only 60 years old, and so that means that if you're collecting Social Security, you wouldn't be collecting it for very long. So at the time, the ratio of workers to retirees, or really beneficiaries, was 159 to 1. Now it's thanks to the declining birth rate and longer life expectancy, it's now only 3 to 1. Just 3 workers paying Social Security for every 1 retiree paying out. And the baby boomers are only just starting to retire. There's still half of them to go. So that number is going to shrink to 2 to 1 by 2030 or so. So and life expectancy now is about, I think, 83 for women and 78 for men. So that means you can, if you collect Social Security, you can easily expect to collect it for, let me do my mental math here, like 13 to 18 years. Yeah, 13 to 18 years of Social Security, not like 1 or 2 and then you die. So Social Security is designed for a demographic that no longer exists, and there's really, I mean, short of introducing a whole bunch of diseases and mandating a higher birth rate, there's really no way we can change the demographics like without force. So I'm not condoning the use of force to change that. I'm condoning the elimination of Social Security. Then on the next welfare disaster list, we have the Great Society pushed through by Lyndon Johnson. So this is the guy who, after passing the Civil Rights Act, said he'd have those quote unquote, N words, because that was acceptable in the 60s, voting Democrat for 200 years. And so he did that by pushing welfare onto the minority communities by incentivizing. He incentivized poverty. Before he launched his war on poverty, poverty was actually plummeting, and then it started to rise as he incentivized it by subsidizing it. So, single parenthood, though, pretty much the whole reason that that's a thing in American society, or at least a prominent thing, is because of LBJ. He subsidized single parenthood, and so it became profitable it became more profitable for couples to stay unmarried, and which made it easier to split up, which meant kids were raised with only one parent or no parent. So he he ended up destroying communities just by pushing all these welfare programs onto them, and they could depend on the system. And he did create voters because once he got poor people onto the Democratic bandwagon, why were they going to leave if they just got free money from the government? Why? It was incentivized. So Lyndon Johnson was a malicious genius, if you think about it. So those are the 2 main debacles. I mean, you can go into all the other welfare programs to say what disaster all that is, but Social Security and the Great Society is pretty much where really the New Deal and the Great Society is really where disaster set in. And I'm not joking about the whole disaster thing. The debt is main reason why the debt is $23 trillion right now. The debt being the federal debt is because the government has so many commitments all these welfare programs that's driving the debt through the roof, and tax revenue doesn't keep up. As I said before, federal budget's 4.6 trillion annually, and tax revenue is only 3.7 trillion, which means there's almost $1 trillion hole to fill every year. Not to mention all the commitments to Social Security and Medicare that need to be paid. And part of the problem with that is that as soon as the government collects money in Social Security, it immediately goes to other programs. It'd be one thing if that was if all they used the money for if they collected money from workers and paid it to retirees, and if they had any extra, they just hold it in trust. That's how it's designed to work. However, that is not how it works. Congress continually borrows from Social Security and spends it on, well, everything. So now according to Social Security and Medicare's own accountants, Medicare is going to become insolvent within like the next 5 to 10 years. Social Security probably the next 10 to 15 years, which is really, really, really bad because a lot of people have not saved anything for retirement because they have, in fact, the majority of baby boomers have no retirement savings because they're counting Social Security, which only pays out like $17,000 or so a year, which is like poverty line income. So, yeah, and there's Democrats who want to tax Social Security now, which is beyond stupid because Social Security is tax money. So they're taxing tax money. Well, then again, public sector employees have their incomes taxed. So, I mean, I can see how it's not, in principle, or in practice, it's really not that much different from that. But come on, it's a different kind of income. It's supposed to be a pension, not a paycheck. There's a difference. So, yeah, welfare has driven us into a pretty deep hole. And they say, and a lot of liberal politicians say, well, let's just cut defense spending. That'll fix the problem. No, it won't. It will not fix the problem at all. They say like the Iraq and Afghanistan war have drained the budget, but really, defense spending is only like 700 billion a year, or like that's Department of Defense money. There's also like some other money that goes to the Pentagon, including a overseas operations fund that pays for Iraq and Afghanistan, and that total brings it to almost $1 trillion. So about a quarter of the federal budget goes to defense. 2/3 of it goes to welfare, and half of that, so 1/3 goes to Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid. So I think I know where the real budget cuts need to be made. I must say though that you should not bring that up in your college class if you're in college, because when I said that cutting welfare and eliminating fraud and waste were the best ways to lower the federal debt, sparks flew everywhere. So the class said, let's just tax the rich, that'll fix it. Trump's tax cut made corporations tax free. It was like, actually, they pay 20. He just lowered the rate from the crippling 35% to 21%. And if you took all the rich people's all billionaires' wealth, which is about 2.5 trillion, it would run the government for like maybe 7 or 8 months. And someone said, well, that's better than nothing. And what are they gonna use money on? I was like, they'll use their money on bettering their communities and funding their businesses. And that's where the professor had to intervene before things got so out of hand that I could have been, well, I don't think I would have been beaten up because it was a school, but, I would not have fared well. So, yeah, in total, that's why welfare sucks, and it was screwed from the beginning. That's all I got for you. Remember, like and subscribe so you can get more content from Patriot or Soapbox daily.